So I'll kick us off with a quick agenda for today. So we'll just do a round of introductions. I will also say a couple words about Mark and let him speak himself as well, and then we'll kick off with his talk on elevating research impact and open data and all of the fun stuff he's been working on at DigiSci and Figshare. And if we have time, we'll go into a little overview of what we do at Atom as well, for those interested. And of course, we'll save some time for a Q&A. So yeah, introductions. So I'm Tom, I'm one of the co-founders here at Atom Grants. This is our, what is it? I think it's our 8th installment in the kind of AI and tech and in the research ecosystem webinar series. And we're super excited to have Mark join us today. Mark and I have kind of been friends. We have a relationship with DigiSci where he works, and he's obviously a founder of Figshare, another kind of big company in the research space as well. And yeah, we're super excited to hear his insights and experiences with open data today, something I think is more and more important across the kind of federal scene as well, with a lot of the new kind of changes in the federal scene for open data requirements. So yeah, Mark, if you want to say a couple words about yourself as well, now's the time.
Yeah, Mark Hamill, founder of Figshare. Very excited about the open data space, particularly with the dawn of AI. I can jump straight into that, or I can, yeah.
I think, do you have a presentation you want to share?
I do have a presentation. I can just share my screen and hopefully
perfect.
Seamlessly. And hopefully everyone can see my screen, and I will talk to you now for the next 20-30 minutes, depending on how fast I talk. But thank you very much for finding the time today. As mentioned, my name is Mark Hamill. I'm the founder of Figshare. Figshare is a platform that anybody can use to make any of their research outputs citable, shareable, and discoverable. It came about when I was a researcher myself. I did a PhD in stem cell biology at Imperial College London, and I had lots of videos like this one in the middle here, which is lots of videos of, I was trying to make stem cells move. That was my PhD project. I was trying to get them to move from towards the site of injury. And so I had lots of these videos, lots of data sets. In every area of research, it seems that everything's getting more computational. And so I had lots of spreadsheet data, I had lots of videos, I had lots of images. And when I went to publish the videos, this is around 2010, 2011, the publisher said, the files are too big. We don't have any way to support publishing of videos, which to the early career researchers on the call might sound amazing, that back in just 2010, we couldn't support publishing videos. And so I started making my videos available online. Other people were telling me you should make them citable, you should make them persistent. And I opened it up to other people, and they started making more of their research outputs available. And the nice thing about having an open platform is that people started sharing all kinds of extra research outputs outside of the traditional peer-reviewed article that they wanted to get credit for. And this can be anything from, posters that you present at conferences, or the presentations that you present at the conferences, the videos that I was just talking about, or spreadsheet data, data sets. When we talk about open academic data, I like to think of it as, what are the files you generate when you're doing your research? And so that's all well and good, in that there's people who have files they want to get credit for. And we've spent the last decade or so looking at ways in which we can try and get more impact for researchers sharing more of their outputs. I think if you go back to, when academic publishing moved onto the web, it was still in the case that it was, you have one form of output and you have one form of impact. And that output is the peer-reviewed publication, and the metric is citations. And that's all we have. But I think what we see now, particularly from funders, is that in different fields, it's not that simple. Obviously, the papers that have been cited hugely, the big machine learning papers of the last few years, they are very high impact, and we should be not ignoring that. But there's also, how do you filter between the early career researchers who have 3 papers with 10 citations, right? How do you see the scope of their work and the effort that they've put in? So on Figshare, this is an example of Figshare. You can see we've got some metrics here. So the usage metrics, views, downloads, citation counts, and altmetric scores. So altmetric tracks Wikipedia, all the social medias, policy, patent. So all of these places where your research may have been picked up. And what it does is anyone can go along to Figshare, upload a file, add some metadata, publish it, and you get a DOI, which we then track for all of these systems. So in theory, you can get credit for all of your research outputs. And so I was very big on seeing how we can reward researchers and how we can get it to the level that it can actively help your career. The way we fund this, because you might be wondering how we can afford to have a free platform where anyone can publish all of their research data, is we're a repository. We provide repositories to hundreds of universities around the world, or governments, or funders, or pharmaceutical clients. And so we build these repositories, white labeled repositories, and your university may use a Figshare repository. And that's how we support the free version that anybody can use. And I like to say that what we do is, in a world where you're trying to publish your outputs and get more impact, what we do is we take care of the boring stuff. But in the boring stuff is actually where we're starting to see more interest in understanding how research is disseminated and how people are reusing content. So you don't have to read this slide. This is just saying we build policy compliant infrastructure. Woo! But we make sure that the content is mapped to the right place. So if you publish data sets, it gets indexed in Google Dataset Search, DataCite, DataOne, Dimensions, and all those other ones. If you publish papers, we push the metadata to Google Scholar. If you publish preprints, it's the same thing. And so we make sure that in the back end, when we're pushing these types of content to different areas, that it goes to the right place. And this is really interesting in the last 5 years, when we've seen a huge amount of growth in certain areas. So I could spend the whole talk talking about how in the year 2000, there was less than 2 million papers published a year. Now there's more than 8 million papers published a year. And so there's 4 times as much content being published. But is there 4 times as many reviewers? Are there 4 times as many academics reviewing those papers? I don't know. I don't think so. So I'm happy to chat. If we were at a conference, I'd say catch me afterwards and we'll chat about it over a coffee or a beer. But I'm more interested in the graph on the right, which shows you in that timeline, if you look at this dark gray bit here, this dark blue area, that's the publication of data sets. And you may say, well, data sets, I've never published my data sets, or it's a new thing for me. I don't really want to do it. I've got reasons why I wouldn't want to do it. But also, I don't think anyone's doing that yet. And what you can see is there's more than 2 million data sets published every year now, which is the same amount of publications as there were in the year 2000. So we're seeing this real exponential growth in data set publications. And this is where, if you are not doing this already, you can get a good advantage on your peers who may be thinking, I'm not having impact for all of my other research outputs. I'm just concentrating on the papers. And so if we look at why this is, all changes in academia, in society, are driven by this idea of there's a policy, then the policy becomes a mandate, then they check for compliance with the mandate, and then measurement. And in the world of carrots and sticks, where you want to incentivize researchers to perform good habits, open data is really powerful, and I'll talk about why that is on the AI level in the exciting world we're in now. But it's also really powerful just in terms of transparency, in terms of reproducibility, in terms of trust in academia. And so pretty much every funder in the world now has an open access policy because they want their research to go out to as many people as possible. They've paid for it. Why can't people read it? And an open data policy. And in January 2023, the National Institute of Health, the biggest funder of biomedical research in the world, had a mandate that is, if we fund you, you need to make your data available. And so we see this policy becoming mandate with massive funders, with the biggest of funders. So that might be the reason why there's 2 million data sets published every year. And so when we want to know what are the blockers as to why not everybody is doing this, we do a survey every year called the State of Open Data Survey in partnership with Springer Nature. And so there's a little bit of a life science skew because Springer Nature authors tend to be life science, biomedical focused. And every year we find out, when we ask researchers, do you think researchers get sufficient credit for sharing their data? The vast majority say no, and it's not getting better year on year. Every year, more say no, and it's not a trend. It's not like, well, less and less are saying they don't get credit every year. And this is even with some good metrics now, so some good data that we already know. If you publish a paper and you link it to a data set in a repository like Figshare, there's lots of other repositories, there's subject-specific repositories like GenBank or PDB. If you publish your paper and link it to the data set in a repository, it's associated with a 25% increase in citations to your paper. So if you make your data available, there is an association that your paper itself will get more citations. And this was on a study of 500,000 PLOS One papers. So it's a good N number. So we know that it is good for your career to make your data openly available, but I don't think everybody knows this. And if you look at the breakdown of researchers globally, and you say, thinking about the country in which you're currently working, how supportive are you of the idea of a national mandate for making research data openly available? You'll see that there's country differences, right? Ethiopia has very strong support. USA, United Kingdom are somewhere in the middle. And China and Japan are less encouraged by it. And so I would say that there's nuance, and different countries have different approaches to open research and open data. I'm going to try and encourage you in the next 15 minutes that you should be making your data openly available. What's also interesting is how supportive researchers are of this national mandate. If you look at Ethiopia, which was the top answer, United States or Japan, and see the ones that were favorable towards it. What's interesting over the last few years is you're starting to see a drop down. Even though there's the difference between the countries, all of them are leaning down. And that's, I think, because researchers are hit with these mandates. They're told, you need to make your data available. And they're thinking, I already work hard. I don't have any time for this. I don't have more time to upload files, add some descriptive metadata, and make them available. So I think this is a case of the rubber hitting the road. So people are less enthusiastic about it, but there are still many good reasons that lack of enthusiasm, you can be the person who works past that in order to help your career. But also, you know, a lot of researchers are in research for the good of humanity. If we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, every single one of those is the biggest emergency problems on planet Earth, whether it's poverty or clean water or climate. Every one of them will need open data and AI to speed things up. In 2010, when I started Figshare, there was a book out. Just the year before, there was a book out by a guy called Jim Gray from Microsoft Academic Research. And he said, we're entering the fourth paradigm of research, which is you have empirical evidence, and then you have scientific reasoning, and then you have computational science. So the The third paradigm was computational science. Everything can go faster with computers to help you out. And now the fourth paradigm is, if we just make everything openly available online, these machines will come along, eat all the information, and spit out new knowledge. There's a lot of questions around whether a lot of what AIs are doing is just regurgitating former knowledge, the stuff we already know written differently. But there's also the opportunity for new knowledge. And if you told me in 2010, 2012, if you asked me how far away this was, I'd say, well, it might happen in my lifetime, maybe. And so I was surprised when a decade later this happened. And this is Google DeepMind. And they took a database called the Protein Data Bank. And what it is they used to do these big experiments using a crystallography machine where they try and get an image of the structure of a protein. So you know the protein chemical structure, but you don't know how it folds. And this is very important when it comes to drug discovery and binding of protein sites. And so between, the early 90s and 2020, there'd been a lot of money going on to these crystallography experiments. And so there was 170,000, 200,000 of these images of these proteins and their structure. And the Protein Data Bank estimated that it cost $100,000 for every one of those experiments. And so what DeepMind did is train their AI models to see, can we predict what a protein folding structure would be based on its chemical structure? And they did it. And at launch, they went from 190,000 structures to 1 million structures. And a year later, they had 200 million structures. And if you think about the cost saving there, let alone the fact we now have a database of all of the how proteins fold, this is an area of research that's just been solved overnight by AI. But if you just look at it from a cost basis, if you think it's $100,000 per experiment, and they've now got 200 million experimental results, I had to Google this number. It's $20 trillion was saved. And so it was big news. And they won the Nobel Prize for chemistry in October last year. So if you said to me, make all the data openly available, someone's going to solve AI, and we'll have this fourth paradigm of research where the machines will come along, eat all the information, and spit out new knowledge. As I said, maybe in my lifetime, it's already happening. And this is a good example, but it's already happening in predicting type 1 diabetes and timing in children, predicting multi-cancer risk over 3 years using a national health resource in Denmark. So this is important, and it's important to think about, because when I say make your data publicly available, when I say Figshare does the boring stuff, what you need to do, and what a lot of funders say, is you need to make the data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable for humans and for machines. And they have a lot of ways to describe what that means. And what we say is Figshare is a platform where your data can be fair. We do all of the boring stuff so it can be fair, but you just need to describe it well. If you publish a data set, or you publish some research, some files on Figshare or other repositories, give it a descriptive title. Don't call it Mark's data set. That's not findable. People won't know what it means. It needs the context. Think of it like you're publishing a paper. What would you call that paper? You wouldn't call it Mark's paper. And so that's all well and good. Solving humanity's biggest problems is great. But what about real credit for your research in the academic space? How can we make it so that researchers who are doing the right thing, who are making their data available, not just because it might solve some of humanity's great problems, but because it also makes research more reproducible, because it also, if your government runs an election and says, this party won, and you said, but what was the votes? Show me the data. And they said, no, we don't need to show you the data. We've worked it out. There'd be a national uproar. And this is what we used to have in academic publishing, data available upon request. All it takes for that to break is just somebody to ignore an email, right? And if we want to move further and faster with research, it needs to be collaborative. You don't want it to trigger on somebody not replying an email to hinder things when we're looking at things like infectious disease and COVID vaccines and what have you. So what is going to happen in the next couple of years in order to help researchers get credit? Is this new thing that's come out? Figshare has had citation counts on it for the last few years. So if you publish your data on Figshare, we will track the citation counts for you. But that's because we have a sister organization called Dimensions. As Thomas mentioned at the beginning, we are part of Digital Science. Digital Science is a family of academic companies. So you may have heard of Overleaf or ReadCube or Altmetric or Papers or Dimensions. And these are all tools in our family. And so we can have citation counts on Figshare because we use our sister company called Dimensions. But that's not really useful if you are a government or a funder and you want to say, I want to track everybody no matter where they publish their data. You know, if you publish in a Springer journal or a Wiley journal or an Elsevier journal, citation counts are the same. And so we need a way to make citation counting open and transparent for data sets across everything. And so there's an organization called DataCite and Make Data Count. And they've said, we have an open database of data citations, every publication and how it links to where it links to a data set. So this is openly available. You can go and play around with it. I have done. This is a very messy slide, but if you look at this database and you ask the question, in countries that publish more than 50,000 publications per year, what percentage of those papers have a link to a data set? And this is really interesting because you can see how different countries are encouraging their researchers to make their data openly available. There's a lot of lines on here. What I would say is the majority go up and to the right. You know, if you look at the number one, Sweden, in the year 2000, less than 1% of papers had a link to a data set. Now it's more than 10%. If you extrapolate this up out past the top of the screen, you can see how we're going to get to a point very fast in some countries where there's the vast majority of papers are linking to a data set. So this is interesting for you as a researcher or for you as an organization who's looking to have more impact. If you start publishing data now, start encouraging your researchers to publish their data, start encouraging the fundees that you fund to make their data openly available, you are still in the early stages and can get that early credit and have a jump start on everybody else. Because we will get to 100% of papers. So you can say you moved within the first 10% of movement. I made this data available. If you go to bit.ly DCC Open Data, you can look and see how your university is doing. You can play around with it and you can see how different funders are doing, how different countries are doing. And so I just did this today. I looked at Stanford, Delft, and UCL. And again, you see the same thing. Everybody is moving up and to the right. Everybody has a much higher number in 2022 than in 2010. But there are differences. So if you are an institution and you want to get more impact and more credit, then now is the time to move. Now is the time to put energy into this. And when we go back and say, well, that's all well and good, but how do I as a researcher get credit for this? You may remember at the beginning of the talk, I'm just getting to the end of the talk now for the moderators. At the beginning of the talk, I mentioned the National Institute of Health. The National Institute of Health in 2023 said, if we fund you, then you need to make your data available when you publish your paper. And so we work with them. We get funding from the National Institute of Health at Figshare. And we looked into the number of NIH-funded papers with links to data sets. And you can see up to, here's the information up to 2022. 2023 is going to be much higher when they've started mandating it. But if you look at how funders think, they started with a policy, they moved to a mandate, they're now in a position where they can check for compliance and see how many people are doing it, because there's ways to track by working with tech companies. And so we're at the point where we say measurement. This measurement is how well each of their institutes is doing. The National Institute of Health has 21 institutes, like the National Cancer Institute, National Heart, Lung and Blood Institute, and you can see they're all piling up. So they can see how well they're doing, how well the compliance is happening at each of their different institutes. But they also have come out with this, which the NIH Data Sharing Index. I'm a judge on this prize. It's $1 million cash prize, where they are asking for a metric for promoting data sharing and developing a robust metric to reward exemplary data sharers. So the challenge aims to incentivize and reward data sharing excellence, promoting a new metric for assessing how effectively researchers share valuable data, driving a culture of openness in science. So this idea that we'll be able to measure it, if you made your data openly available, there is going to be an S index, is in the same way that there is a H index. This will come out next year. And the NIH now has a way to start giving credit and saying, if you apply for funding with us and you're doing very well with your S index, it can be taken into consideration when it comes to funding. And I think the NIH is the first here. I think the really exciting thing for me is there is no head starts here. It doesn't matter if you're at the most prestigious university on the planet. It doesn't matter if you're very well funded. If you take a look at countries that publish more than 1,000 papers per year and see how well they're doing for dataset publishing, the blue is doing bad, the yellow is doing good. You can see this gradient here. And you can see that Northern Europe is doing well, America's doing okay, Africa is doing really, really well. So a lot of countries that are not traditionally leading when it comes to impact and metrics in academia are already taking an early start and taking an early jump on the competition because they can do. So I would encourage you to come up with ways to, if you're a researcher yourself, make all of your research outputs openly available. If you are a institution or a librarian, encourage your researchers to do this, because there is new ways to get impact for your research and new ways for the funders to fund you. Now all of the pieces have fallen together. And it's good for humanity, and we're going to solve all the sustainable development goals with AI at the same time as well. That's everything from me. Happy to answer questions, and also happy to hang on and discuss further.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That was really fascinating. Cool. We've got a couple questions from the room, so I'll probably just like read through them, and then you can answer them, Mark, as most of them are for you. So from James Kohler, the question is related to peer review. Is there peer review of data submitted?
There is not peer. Well, so there is not peer review of data submitted. We work with publishers. If you publish in Nature and they ask you to put the data in their repository with the Nature repository, if you publish in ACS and with the ACS repository. So we work a lot with publishers. And I think there's a big difference, because what we actually need for data is peer review to make the data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so we do have a paid service for really big data sets, and we do some curation there. But I wouldn't say it's peer review. I'd say what you need is editorial checks. It's almost like part of the publication process, right? It's do you have a descriptive title? Are all the files here that I need to replicate it? It's not, is this data novel? It's facts usually, right? Is this the information I need to reproduce the findings in the paper? So there's no peer review as yet, and publishers do not peer review data as part of the peer review process for the most part today.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that question, James. Mimi Das asked, would making data publicly available impact or affect IP or patent right for the PI and institution?
No, so there's obviously the vast majority of academic research data can be published. If you work for a pharmaceutical company, you probably can't publish that data as it's not your research. And there's areas like, there's definitely areas where research data, it's not a good idea to publish. So there's a idea that as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So if you think I'm going to make my research open as possible, as closed as necessary, then you're in a good place there. So if you are tracking, the coordinates of the last known white rhino, probably don't publish that because the poachers will just go and find it. But if it's patient confidentiality, don't publish that. But when it comes to research that you're doing, by publishing it, you get it's persistent. You can't delete it. You're getting a timestamp. And so a lot of people use repositories like Figshare to say, I was the first. I was the first person to use a nanopore sequencer for genomic data, and here's the data from it. And it's got a timestamp. They can't play around with it. It's like saying, I was the first. You can choose a license that is more restrictive. So CC BY means that anyone who uses your data has to cite you. And so while there are areas of research that you probably don't want to make the data openly available, the vast majority you do, and it can be good for your IP.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, interesting on the rhinos. Yeah, you probably don't want to do that.
I don't even know if there's a thing, but
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that question, Mimi. A question from, and I'm sorry if I butcher this name, Igathinathane. Is it also encouraged to put the old data and get credit?
Yeah, that's the good thing about it is we see lots of people, and when I say it's the files, the more data you make available, the more opportunity there is for someone to Google, find your research, reuse your research, give you credit for it, cite your data. But we also see when we work with universities, like I say, we power the repositories for lots of universities around the world, UCL up the road, Australia, America, Europe, South Africa. We often find that the institution will bring them in because they think, oh, the neuroscientists need to make their data available. And then when they put the repository in, they find out that it's folks who are working in the humanities who say, I'm about to retire and I have 50 years of CDs with my, digital archives of puppetry making, and I want to make all of that available. So now it persists and I have a long-term archive of all of my research outputs, and it doesn't just live in the file drawer or on the shelf. So yeah, you can make all of your content available.
Fascinating. I just got a couple other questions that came in on the kind of sign up form. And if anyone wants to kind of add any additional questions or come off mic and ask some questions, you can raise your hand there and I'll give you some time off the mic as well. But yeah, Mark, I think you addressed most of these questions throughout your talk, but just to kind of go over it again. So does open research pave the way for AI to train on real science?
Yeah, I think it's put very simply, if you don't have content openly available, it won't be going into the AI models. There is an argument to be made that ChatGPT has access to everything, whether it's, behind a paywall or not. But I can guarantee you that if it's in your file drawer or on a CD on your shelf, that it's not going into it. I don't know how the credit metrics are going to work for that over time. We're seeing new licenses of, humans can read it, but AIs can't be trained on it and things like this. So I think it's a very interesting space. But yeah, the PDB and things like this is a great example of, we wouldn't have solved protein folding if there wasn't a data set to train it on. And what we need, I like to think of it like chess, and the idea that if a human, like in the 80s, computers started getting good at chess, and a computer could beat a human, and then a computer would always be a human. And then they realized that if you have a human aided by a computer, that it would always beat the computer. And so I think that's what we're going to find with AI. You know, you're not going to lose your job to an AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who's adapted to AI better than you have. And I think humans and AIs, the DeepMind example, they're pulling out higher order insights from the data. It's not truly the fourth paradigm, and the machine just comes along and says, oh, here's some new knowledge. They need to be led by the experts in the niche area that they're looking at. And so it will be, I am excited about how many areas are going to get solved by AI and data, and what we need for it is more data. What we need from it is your data.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think what's interesting there is that it's the humans that were the one who were awarded the Nobel Prize, right? They were the ones who came with the insights and had to kind of wrangle the AI to come up with the results. So
interestingly, all of the 170,000 people who'd made data available in the Protein Data Bank didn't get the Nobel Prize.
That is also interesting.
Which I think they should have done.
That is, yeah, that's a hot take, but a good one. Yeah, nice. Just a couple more questions here, and then we'll kind of move on to next bits about Adam. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some stuff about so that question previously was from Julie, thank you. Next question is from Maureen, and it's related to some of the comments you made about the NIH and what they're kind of requiring now. But yeah, what do you see as the kind of the latest level on where kind of various agencies are at in terms of what they're requiring and what platforms they're pushing people to use? I think mostly focused on the US, but UK too is fine.
Yeah, pretty much every charitable funder, Bill and Melinda Gates, Wellcome Foundation, they have a data mandate already. And pretty much every large government agency has a policy or a mandate now. That includes China, that includes Kenya, that includes most of North America. So, you know, NASA, things like this. But I think the message that they always have is, if there is a subject-specific repository, publish your data in the subject-specific repository. And if there's nowhere else, use a generalist repository like Figshare or Zenodo or Dryad. So there are options depending on what your preferences are. But if you're publishing genetic sequences, publish them in GenBank, because you'll have someone to hold your hand. What we really need is a subject-specific repository for every subject, but they just can't afford to do that. And so with the generalist repositories, where you benefit is, it's free to use and what have you, but where you lose help is you don't have someone holding your hand. You don't have somebody telling you, give it a descriptive title, otherwise no one's ever going to find this. You've gone to the trouble of ticking that box because the funder told you to, and you've called it Mark's dataset. No one's ever going to say that because they've no idea what it is, right? So trying to encourage people to go the whole way is the next big step. I think it's, a snowball rolling down a hill. They're not going to put the genie back in the bottle on this. I'm out of metaphors.
Cool. I think maybe another question from Maureen here in the chat, and then that's the final one. We'll just wrap up on these questions after this. Is she's curious to hear your thoughts and suggestions on how you suggest that researchers should communicate their leadership in the data sharing space at proposal stage. So that's the first part of that question. And then the second part, on the proposer side, it's easy to say, I share my data, believe me, on the reviewer side, they're not necessarily trained or incentivized to value data sharing as a merit criterion.
Yeah, I think that's coming. I don't think it's here yet. I think the S index is the first stage of that, and there is a lot of education that needs to be done. There's a lot of funding that goes into it globally. The European Commission and Horizon 2020 funded billions into training, but it's everybody wants it to move faster, and it's going to move at the pace it's going to move because it's a huge societal change. But I do think, the nice thing about things like Figshare and other repositories is you can prove it. I can go to my Figshare profile because I've shared stuff there and say, I only, I didn't make it past 6 months of a postdoc because I started Figshare. So I have like 3 academic papers with like 10 citations each. But I also have all this other stuff on Figshare that has, 70 citations and 100,000 downloads. So you can point people in the right direction, and you can demonstrate, the auditable stats.
Awesome. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone that asked questions, to you, Mark, as well, for a fascinating talk. Thank you for everyone joining. I'm just going to quickly touch a little bit about what we do at Atom. So we've been hosting these webinars now since the start of the year. And we obviously have our own kind of research platform as well. And so for all the research administrators that are in the room, we actually support you identifying and putting out grant proposals. So if you are interested in learning how we can help you use AI to identify funding opportunities, decipher eligibility requirements, automatically send out kind of personalized newsletters to researchers and just like boost your impact, feel free to reach out to me. My email's there, so I'm at tomer@atomgrants.com. You can also scan that. You can scan the QR code that's on the screen there as well to learn a bit more about Atom and book a demo. So if you want to discover more grants, increase your funding, and increase engagement across faculty, feel free to reach out. And just want to say thank you again to Mark and everybody here. I think we've got we'll give you back 13 minutes of your day here. So thank you, everybody.